All right, guys, this is week 3 of college football. It'll be game 4 for Illinois and Nebraska. So we've got number 22 Nebraska hosting number 24 Illinois. It's a Friday night game. Going to give you my breakdown on some key players to watch and just what to expect out of this game. I've watched all the Husker games so far, and I've only watched Illinois versus Kansas. So I'll be breaking down what I saw from Illinois out of that game and what we can expect on Friday. Illinois has a couple players to watch. By far, their best player is Xavier Scott, number 14. He's a junior. He's got 3 interceptions on the year. One was a pick six against Kansas. He ended up having 2 interceptions in that game and a handful of really good tackles in the running game. He's also got a sack and a forced fumble on the season. He's definitely their best player. He makes plays, just seems like he's everywhere on defense. So it's a player for Nebraska to keep an eye on. Also, their leading wide receiver, Pat Bryant, and quarterback Luke Altmaier. Their quarterback, he's not incredibly impressive, but he does not turn the ball over. Makes really safe plays. I think he's got 650 passing yards, 6 touchdowns on the seasons, no fumbles, no interceptions. So if we can force him to make some mistakes, it'll bode well for us. And then they also have another wide receiver named Zachary Franklin. Both the receivers on the outside have really good hands. They do a good job hand fighting and catching the ball in contested catch situations. So those are some key players to look for against the matchup at Illinois that we're going to want to watch out for those guys. Avoid Scott on defense and then shut down the receivers on the outside. Their running game against Kansas was not very impressive. Averaged maybe 4 yards a carry. It seemed very pedestrian. So not as worried about the running game this week. For Nebraska, it's going to come down to a couple different guys. I've got Dylan Raiola. As long as he can continue to limit mistakes and avoid turnovers, we should be in pretty good shape. The running back room for Nebraska will play a big factor in this game. I believe Kansas had nearly 160, almost 200 yards by halftime rushing the ball. So if Nebraska can get the running game going early, then should have a pretty easy night for us, and I think we'll win by more than that 7.5 point spread that is currently at. As far as on defense, it's always going to start up front with Nash and Ty Robinson. I saw Kansas's defensive tackle getting a lot of pressure up the middle against the center for Illinois. So I think Nash is going to have a big day, likely going to force some sacks over to those guys outside the pocket. So you got Leonard and Robinson on the outside that should be able to capitalize. So what I saw from Kansas from Illinois was a very disciplined team that was not going to beat themselves. I kept thinking this reminds me of Iowa. Their offense finished a lot of drives with punts. They would take field goals. When they did get turnovers, they had a defensive touchdown from Xavier Scott. He had a pick six in that game. And then I think there was he had another interception earlier. They got a field goal off that. And then they another one of their safeties got a interception, late in the game that kind of kept him in it. They did not have a very explosive offense. They just did what kind of needed to be done to hang around. And that's what I think we're going to see is if they can create turnovers and hang around, it's going to be a long game for Nebraska, and it'll be a slugfest. If Nebraska can limit their mistakes and get the running game going, Illinois had a lot of trouble fitting the run against Kansas. Kansas has 2 really good backs in Neal, and I believe the other guy, number 9, I'm forgetting his name right now. But they did a really good job making guys miss, breaking tackles. I think Dowdle and Johnson are going to have some opportunity to make big plays in this game, and if they do, we should be able to lean on our running game. I don't think we've leaned on our running game as much as we've wanted to. It's kind of been more pass and get the lead in the first half and then run in the second half, take the air out of the ball, and then we've had some penalties that have kind of taken away from the running game. So hopefully we can minimize the penalties, get the running game going early, and just kind of force Illinois to play from behind. If they're forced to play from behind, we could get up 2-3 scores early in this game and then just kind of put the game away earlier. As far as Illinois' offense, they do have some good receivers on the outside that I mentioned, Pat Bryant and Franklin. Those guys are good in tight situations. They don't generate a ton of separation And Altmaier, sometimes he struggles with the timing on the ball. He's able to buy time. He's not incredibly mobile, but he is mobile enough to step outside the pocket, get some additional time, and then make a throw after coverage is breaking down. So if we can make him throw early, force it into tighter windows, force him to guess, we should be able to create turnovers or get sacks on him if he chooses to hold the ball. The running game was very unimpressive. Kansas is a very solid team. They did a good job stopping the run all night, and Illinois was never able to get their running game really rolling and it be a factor. So they end up in a lot of third down situations that they just didn't convert, and then they had to punt. So not a lot of threat from their offense. Their defense, again, they struggled to stop the run. It seemed like Kansas was able to run whenever they wanted, and then just some uncharacteristic, unforced errors by Jalen Daniels. I think he was trying to make plays. It was a second game of the season for them. Just looking to make plays too much and forcing the ball where it didn't need to be. If he would have protected the ball, I think Kansas probably would have won by at least 14 points, if not more. I think we're a much better team than Kansas. I think we got a better D-line. I think their quarterback is pretty comparable. He's probably more athletic from Raiola. I think Raiola is going to do a better job taking care of the football, not trying to force the ball into those tighter windows where we don't need to take a risk. Some other things that I saw from the Kansas game from Illinois is their coaching staff does a really good job with play calling to put them in favorable situations and make the game easier. They don't have the studs that are going to break a big play, so they kind of have to move the ball down the field in smaller chunks, 4, 5, 7 yards. And they do a good job using motion pre-snap to get late reads to the defense. A lot of times they go with the motion. So if you see somebody in motion, there's a good chance the play is going to follow the motion, or the guy in motion is the one getting the ball. I also saw them come to the line of scrimmage late a couple times and then kind of break the huddle and snap it to catch the defense off guard. So they do have good coaching as far as putting themselves in the best position to win, knowing what their strengths are. And again, they just not turning over is probably their biggest strength on offense, and hoping that you make mistakes and they can punish you with field position in the game. Another thing that I noticed is with the lack of, I'll say, speed on the outside, they did not take a lot of deep shots, especially in the first half. But when they had a lead late in the game, they started to open up a little bit more and push the ball 10, 15, 20 yards downfield to some of the receivers, and were able to connect. But I saw that very, very late in the game, so it doesn't feel like something they're initially comfortable with. And I feel like it opened up at the end of the game because they had gotten a lead off the turnovers and converted points, and Kansas was kind of moving guys forward to the line of scrimmage to stop that, and just good play calling, taking advantage of them moving forward and then throwing behind the defense. Quarterback does a good job of getting the ball out quickly, a lot of out routes, swing routes, a lot of easy layup throws for the quarterback to develop him in rhythm. I feel like if our defense plays tight and we can get pressure up the middle and we cover those underneath routes and force them to go down the field, it's not going to work out well for them, especially with guys like Tommy Hill and Gifford back there. We should be able to take advantage and hopefully get him to make his first turnovers of the year against us. Kicking game, their kicker did hit a 50-yard field goal against Kansas, so they've got a solid kicker. He's got a good leg. Return game wasn't a huge factor. They tackled okay. Kansas got some past the 30, 35-yard line on the returns, but they didn't break anything big. Overall, my assessment would be that Illinois is a very solid team. I would compare them to Iowa. They do not have as good a D-line as they had last year. That seems to be kind of a weaker point of their team, especially struggling to stop the run, And so it's pretty easy just to figure out what we need to do from the Husker side of the football. Just limit mistakes and don't beat ourselves. Should be an easy game for us as long as we limit turnovers, limit penalties. I do not see Illinois having the players to keep up with what we have as far as speed on the outside, blocking on the O-line, the pressure we're able to put with our D-line and Tony White's defense. I think the Huskers win by probably 3 or more scores on Friday. If you guys can do me a favor, like and subscribe. Leave a comment below with what you think the score will be.